Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week's theme of positive confusion, exploring a song that leaves you a bit bewildered, but certainly wanting more. We're going to check out Sonata Arctica, which is, that's a title, isn't it? The track we're checking out is called X Marks the Spot off of their Pariah's Child album. Let's see what Sonata Arctica is bringing to the table today.
I was in a really dark place. I even thought of packing it in, but I just could not bring myself to do it. I'd met an old friend that I'd had a real connection with, and he saw my despair. He asked me if I'd like to play with him, and as we played, I felt slowly but surely rock and roll grabbed me by the neck, and I went.
You are a man of impeccable taste, and you know well the X marks the spot. We all need a map for the trail of your thought. Where to go? Well, the X marks the spot. You seem to have a misgiven. Hell yeah, you make a living. Don't that brings to what we're heaving. We would so much rather enjoy the beach beer and fly. You think something somewhere has a copyright for the world, and you sign where the X marks the spot. You join a cult, fill the void that you got deep within where the X marks the spot. Where you stand and talk and holler, how dark are all your colors when you paint another sunrise. You leave out the sun. Birds like you fly straight to heaven.
So this is power metal.
Slowly float to how well do you know those you're calling your own? I mean, come on, dude! You're a starving soul in your house of skin and bone. You're an island, the X marks the spot.
Testify, children, testify!
There you stand and talk and holler.
Boy.
How dark are all your colors when you paint another sunrise? You leave out the sun. Birds like you fly straight to heaven. Heaven, oh, they slowly float to words like you fly straight to heaven. Heaven, oh, they slowly float to
Rock and roll allowed me to join this band, and there was a period of time when I hadn't exactly lost my soul. I just didn't know where I'd put it, and I ended up in some very dark places and some dire circumstances. Now let me tell you, children, I was trying to fill a void in my heart. To fill that void, I thought I'd always wanted success, prosperity, the admiration I'd wanted as a player. I got to play some big shows and travel the world from end to end. In the midst of it all, I had this yearning in my heart for rock and roll. I was called to join this band, and I was surrounded by good folks that were servants of the rock and roll who passed on the love. I'll testify, the fear was in me. I was afraid of everything. I could swear I saw my own living heart beating through my shirt.
You are a circus, but where is the clown? There's no map, still the X marks the spot. There you stand, talking holler, how dark are all your colors?
Is that a harp?
Paint another
I've been trying to figure out that very bright, plucky instrument this whole time. It's almost too percussive to be a harp, but that might be the way it's produced. Oh no, that's our synth, that's our keyboard, isn't it? Okay. Kind of cardiac-y right here.
Now Are you ready to spread the word? Everybody sing hey oh. Everybody sing whoa. Everybody sing hey, hey. Whoa, whoa. Hey, hey. Huh?
Birds like you fly straight to heaven, heaven, or they slowly flow to birds like you fly straight to heaven, heaven, or they slowly float away.
And the funny thing was, I was like a spiritual baby running around with diapers on where the X marks the spot. I had given my life to rock and roll, but I still wasn't sure. Was there rock and roll? Is it real?
What? What did I listen to? Um, okay, so I think is it's clear as day, right? This is campy. Intentionally, so I'd say it's kind of cheesy. Power metal typically leans into that, but I feel like they go the extra mile with it with these characters. I don't know if this is his typical singing voice, but it is very, very nasally in a way that seems to accentuate it. Because, like, okay, so here's the thing people sing nasally all the time, right? It's not usually something that gets brought up unless it's way overdone, which is either something you can force to really get that sound up there, to really push it in there, or it's something the production can bring out of your performance, but it's just normal outside of, I'd probably say, a Praddick, right? Classically trained singing really teaches you to not get anything much up into that upper resonance, into that nasally area, for everything to be full bodied. But we even have some pop singers today who are heralded for their vocal talents, and there's a little bit of that nasal component to it. It's part of what gives them their unique character, their unique timbre. Um, so it's not a bad thing. But when it's played up like this and attention is brought to it, that's the oddity, right? The attention has been brought to it. So like that's kind of curious. And then we have that gremlin voice down here that somebody brought in at one time. We have these ridiculous vocal belts, and then we have his rock pastor persona that he comes in uh, telling a story, and all these characters come together, and they all kind of feel stereotypical aside from the main vocals. That one is just there's just a lot of attention given to one specific spectrum of the delivery. But everything else feels like a character coming out in some way, and it kind of makes it feel campy, cheesy. And I'm really curious what I mean. This is a hour long album, 10 tracks long. This is on the back half. It's very possible that this is a concept album, and the purpose of this is to do something within the context of everything else, and maybe it is the most lighthearted track on the album. Maybe everything they do is just like this, in which case this isn't an outlier at all. It feels like an outlier to me because we don't listen to very much like this. So, like, I'm trying to keep all of this in perspective. What is going on here? And what are they attempting to accomplish? And I don't think I can answer that in a vacuum. I think it would work better to know what Sonata Arctica typically does, and even more important is what they have done on the album up to this point. So, I don't think I'm going to attempt to answer their intentions. I think it makes a lot more sense to dig into what the music is doing figure out how it all plays together and see if they accomplished a goal, regardless of what that goal is. So let's look at the music. We have a lot of chords or single note ideas that fit within the chord. There is a lot of this track that is constant eighth notes building a chord. We do have a chord that appears in the keyboard, but the guitar and bass typically play one note, usually within the chord, and they have the same rhythm. This just this constant eighth note drive, right? This is what powers underneath the song in pretty much every single section. The drums are very functional. They act as a metronome primarily. And all of this, of course, is designed to put as much emphasis as possible on what's in the spotlight. The music is actively avoiding it, and in the spotlight is our vocalist. This makes sense because this feels like a story to me. Much like pop music, where the lyrics, the vocals are key, I believe that's what's happening here as well. The music is just constantly getting out of the way of the vocals. There is one place where this doesn't happen, and I think that's our chorus. Our guitars shift to whole notes, basically playing the chord and holding it out rather than having this frequently played muted eighth note idea. And here's the thing that kind of deviates from this is that we have a synth idea, I think, that is very loud, center channel, and way up in the mix. It tries to overpower the vocals. And my attention quickly and consistently was brought to it. I tried to figure out what the instrument was the first time, and I think the second time was when I landed on it being the synth with some really interesting rhythmic pattern going on. It sounds like it kind of sounds like it wants to be a harp. It sounds bright and plucky, but it also has a hard, resonant attack to it, much like a glockenspiel would have. And that's when it kind of dawned on me that the pitch is also kind of the amorphous, and it is probably some sort of synth pad um, that has rises and declines of attack, but where the pitch itself is constantly in flux. And I think it probably should have been pushed to the background a little bit. It overpowers just a hair and is kind of static. It does fluctuate on its own, but it's probably uh, the performance of it is probably holding down the chord and just letting all the automation handle the movement. I suppose the movement could also be done by hand. You got dials and stuff, but there's a couple of factors being modified simultaneously, which would just be a bit difficult to do with one hand. So while there is movement and it changes, it is a static idea. It's just one chord being played. And so it doesn't add as much to the song as the moving melody does in our lyrics and our vocals. And so it's an interesting decision to put it front and center when actually the guitars are adding more, since at least they're changing every 4 beats. Aside from that, though, the rest of the song is still getting out of the way for the vocals. And that is the verse chorus. That's like 50% of the song. There's two other sections we have to talk about. One is the bridge, or I guess just the spoken word sections in general, but most of them are rather minimal. The bridge happens to put two guitar solos and an organ solo underneath the spoken word. We also shift heavily from this frequent muted eighth note idea or whole notes to riffs, rule of cool style riffs that utilize a lot of pedal tones and shifting pitches around that to craft this type of energy and drive. It is a vastly different texture, a vastly different feel, and a different atmosphere. We're in it for a little bit. We have some solos over it. mostly shred, two patches of spoken word, and then we're back to the final verse chorus idea before our outro, which is spoken word with nothing under it. So we have an A B A B C B pattern, or maybe C A B. I don't remember if we have a third verse at the end or not. But that's that's the whole song. Is getting out of the way for the vocals or playing solos under the vocals. And so we have a song that is kind of emotionally resonant in our A and our B. It's more texturally resonant in our C. There's still an emotion in the C, and like I said, it's more driving, it's more energetic. I don't really want to say aggressive. I think the guitar tones do take on a bit of a more darker tone to them, but I don't want to call it an aggressive sound. It could just be that they choose to utilize lower notes as well in that section. Probably using the lowest string, which uh, just kind of compounds or contrasts with what I think is probably the middle of the guitar, string wise, for our A and B sections. I don't actually know if there is a tone difference other than you would EQ lower notes different than you would EQ higher notes. Um, and so we end up with a track that feels campy half the time and just has this darker, energetic momentum in the other half. And I don't really see how they go together. I don't really get much of a story out of it. It kind of feels the emotional landscape is generic, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Just this feels like standard metal environments. We're not really dealing with any sorts of strong emotions. It's just its driving intensity through all of it. Um, and so it brings me back to the vocals. They're the standout element here, and I get comedy out of them. Or if nothing else, at least fun. And so I have to ask myself, what is the point of the track in a vacuum? And the best I can have is that a bunch of people wanted to have fun and made a fun track, and it's not too difficult to play. The solos definitely push the chops of the guitarist and keyboardist. There's a couple of moments of higher range belts the vocalist is going to have to work towards, but 90% of this is pretty straightforward music with some fun vocals on top of them. And it just feels like a real chill time that's probably really fun to play live. And I think that's the end of my read on this. It's not a very deep read, but there's not a lot of depth to the music either. It's just a fun track. I'm going to hit lyrics, all right? Because I think this is really going to either solidify what I think or cause me to reevaluate everything, and it might extend this analysis out even longer. So let me hit some lyrics, and we'll take it from there. Yeah, I get this now. This is one of those songs where the lyrics really put everything into perspective. It touches on some of the things that I missed or forgot about, such as the tone of the organ. It's a very specific tone that they utilized on the keyboard, a very specific instrument, uh, virtual instrument they put through it. It reminds me a lot of church organs. And so when we take that, the simplistic music, and we tie it all together, we get a track that is a sermon to those who are lost to reach out and find something which might help them find a place in the world. And that something is rock and roll. um, the opening spoken word part says that our narrator was flirting with suicide. They felt really lost. They were in a dark place, but their friend asked them if they wanted to play rock and roll. You want to play an instrument in our band? And he said, sure, whatever. And rock and roll saved him. The pre-chorus, nope, not the pre-chorus. Where is it? Well, okay, so there is one pre-chorus I don't care about. There is another pre-chorus that gets utilized everywhere else. It's really weird. We have pre-chorus 1 and then pre-chorus 2 that shows up before the next three choruses. It says, there you stand and talk and holler. How dark are all your colors. When you paint another sunrise, you leave out the sun. Um, talking about people who present themselves as dark or feel like they're in a dark place or whatever. He's like, I'm talking to you. You out there who feel like everything's dark, right? You only wear black, you got your black nail polish on, you know, when you metaphorically paint sunrises, you don't even paint the sun. It's the subject of the picture, but you can't allow that light, even when it's when it's the whole purpose of the art, right? You won't even look at the light then. He says, you know, you need to get rock and roll. It'll save your life. It'll make everything better, right? And this leads us back to pre-chorus 1. It says, don't add bricks to what you're heaving. We'd rather enjoy the beach beer and a fire. Right? We'd rather be living the chill, happy life. Don't let all this stuff weigh you down. You've already got a lot of baggage on your shoulders. Don't add more. Try to take stuff off. Right? And rock and roll is going to help you with that. And so when we get to the interlude and we get our rock pastor going up there, rock and roll allowed me to join this band, and there was a period of time when I hadn't exactly lost my soul. I just didn't know where I'd put it, and I ended up in some very dark places and some dire circumstances. Now let me tell you, children, I was trying to fill a void in my heart. To fill that void, I got what I always wanted, right? And he goes into very much like a sermon. Yeah, and we get these really sick guitar solos behind it, where you might normally have a choir, right? Providing these really nice chords underneath your sermon. And we go through the chorus again, the pre-chorus, and we end out with, now you children, are you ready to spread the word? Everybody sing, right? So it brings everybody into this event and has them have some vocalization, some ayos, whoas, hey heys, right? That kind of stuff. They would repeat what he said, right? And then sends them out. Go spread the word of rock and roll. Now that you understand the light that it brings. That's what this song is about. That's why it feels so campy. That's why it feels so cheesy. But it absolutely works. It is attempting at as best as they can to mimic a church service, both musically and scripturally, the message of a sermon in the context both of rock and roll as a topic and metal as a song beneath it, leaning into what I assume is power metal. It's their bread and butter. It's the kind of music they make, which is already cheesy to begin with. Yeah, this it's it's kind of dumb, but that's the good thing about cheesy stuff is it can be effectively and fantastically stupid. And that is why I love campy cheesy art in all medias. Um and this is just so perfectly executed. I love this. Oh man, those are my thoughts on Sonata Arctica's X Marks the Spot. This is where y'all come in. What'd you think of it? Did you enjoy it? Anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on, let me know down in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box, and in there you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to the Discord server, you can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. Alright, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.